Forward by David Hare. In 2010, I was first approached by the BBC and Participant Films to adapt Deborah Lipstadt's book History on Trial for the screen. My first reaction was one of extreme reluctance. I have no taste for Holocaust movies. It seems both offensive and clumsy to add an extra layer of fiction to suffering which demands no gratuitous intervention. It jars. Faced with the immensity of what happened, sober reportage and direct testimony has nearly always been the most powerful approach. In the Yad Vashem Museum in Jerusalem, I had noticed that all the photography, however marginal and however inevitably incomplete, had a shock and impact lacking in the rather contrived and uninteresting art. It was a considerable relief on reading History on Trial to find that, although the Holocaust was its governing subject, there was no need for it to be visually recreated. In 2000, the British historian David Irving, whose writing had frequently offered a sympathetic account of World War II from the Nazi point of view, had sued Deborah Lipstadt in the High Court in London, claiming that her description of him as a denier in her previous book, Denying the Holocaust, had done damage to his reputation. In English courts at the time, the burden of proof in any libel case lay not with the accuser, but with the defendant, compared to the United States, where it was the litigant's job to prove the untruth of the alleged libel. It was for that very reason that London was Irving's chosen venue. He had thought it would make his legal action easier. All at once, an Atlanta academic found herself with the unenviable task of marshalling conclusive scientific proof for the attempted extermination of the European Jews over 50 years earlier. There were many interesting features to the case, not least the condescension of some dubious parts of the British academic community to an upstart American. But three aspects appealed to me above all. First, there was a technical script-writing challenge. In conventional American pictures, the role of the individual is wholeheartedly celebrated. In a typical studio film, even one as good as Aaron Brockovich, there is always an obvious injustice which is corrected by an inarticulate person suddenly being given the chance to find their voice. The tradition goes back to Jimmy Stewart, Henry Fonda, and beyond. But what was unusual about Lipstadt's experience was that she was an already articulate and powerfully intelligent woman who was ordered by her own defense team not to take the stand. The decision was made that her testimony would give David Irving, conducting his own prosecution, the opportunity to switch the focus of the trial from what it should properly be about, the examination of how his anti-Semitism infected his honesty, to an attack on something entirely irrelevant, the reliability in the witness box of Lipstadt's instant capacity to command every scattergun detail of history. It was quite a professional undertaking to make drama out of such a complete and painful act of self-denial. One thing was for sure, we would not be offering a boilerplate Hollywood narrative. At great expense to her own peace of mind, Deborah Lipstadt had agreed to be silenced. The fascination of the film would lie with the personal cost of that choice. What were the implications for someone who, having been brought up to believe in the unique power of the individual, discovered instead the far subtler joys of teamwork? The book she had written turned out to be her complete defense, and the verdict vindicated that book in almost every detail. But in order to effect that defense, she had to trust the judgment of two other people from a country and a bizarre legal system different from her own: her Scottish barrister, Richard Rampton, and her English solicitor, Anthony Julius. Second, it was clear from the start that this film would be a defense of historical truth. It would be arguing that, although historians have the right to differently interpret facts, they do not have the right to knowingly misrepresent those facts. But if such integrity was necessary for historians, then it surely had to apply to screenwriters too. If I plan to offer